Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be sharing my birth story with you guys. It's long overdue. Our sweet boy is 10 weeks old, but it's hard as a first time mom figuring out like balance with everything. But anyways, if that is something you want to hear more about, then just keep watching. Okay, so to just kind of catch you up to this point, if you don't know my story, when I was 24 weeks pregnant with him, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and it is inoperable. So that completely changed the birth plan moving forward. Initially, I wanted a completely physiological, unmedicated birth, but that changed. At first, it was going to be a C-section, and then obviously those are extremely, not extremely dangerous, but they're not ideal for any birth scenario unless it's an emergency, and we weren't in an emergency state. So my entire medical team met, from like my OB team, anesthesiology, and neurology. They all met to come up with a plan for me to figure out what was the best birth plan for me, keeping in consideration what I wanted. So again, first it was a C-section. Then they determined if I want to have multiple babies, which I do. That's not a wise beginning stage to start. So then it was go into labor naturally, and we will just be, I will be heavily monitored, and he would be heavily monitored for any neurological symptoms that I might have. Then a couple weeks later, they met again and determined for the brain pressure during the pushing process, in case it were to trigger a seizure. They didn't want me going past 40 weeks so that he would be smaller so he could come out easier. So that was the plan. So on November 4th, went in for my induction at 8 p.m. and really things didn't get started until like 10:30 or 11. There were multiple other babies being born that night, so my doctor wasn't able to see me right away. But when she did come into the room and check me just to see where things were going, or starting at, I should say, I was only half a centimeter dilated, so he was nowhere ready to be born at that time. So I was given Cytotec, and that just helps ripen the cervix, and I was given that around like 11:30 or so probably. If you hear him chatting, that's probably gonna happen this whole time. He's a chatty boy. He's playing right here next to me. But so they gave me the Cytotec, and 4 hours later I was like maybe a 1. I don't even think that though. I hadn't really progressed at all. So then the next course to help speed things along was to get a fully balloon, fully tube thing. And I had heard previously via the internet that those were excruciatingly painful, so I was super hesitant and didn't want that. But after talking with the doctor, she said, you know, I don't have to do it, but it's just going to be a slower labor if I don't do that. So, because the Cytotec didn't do anything productive, so another round of it wasn't going to do much either. So I consented to the fully balloon, fully tube. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But it's basically like a rubbery straw that's completely enclosed on the one side, and they put it into your cervix and then fill it with saline to 4 centimeters round, so that it's putting pressure right on my cervix to dilate that much, because he wasn't low enough to do it himself. So I think I had that in. They put that in around, okay, so if I had started the Cytotec at 11:30 or so, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30-ish, maybe 4, is when the fully balloon was put in. And it was not excruciating, but it was super uncomfortable, I will say. And that plus the Pitocin that they also started administrating made contractions happen right away. They were very intense, and they were happening back to back. In the videos we have of the whole labor process that are just personal videos for us, I was just watching them, and the contractions I said were, I and and my husband Blake said that they were happening around every 4 minutes. So they were really intense and back to back for me not being anywhere close to being able to like push him out. But I did have a doula. She came in, well, I didn't have her. She was a volunteer doula, but my nurse had told me right away that she was there. And I said, yeah, bring her in if she can, you know, I'd love to have her. So she was with me for a good portion. She came in around 8 is when she got started. And she was giving me counter pressure on my back and helping with my hips and just moving around to make the contractions as comfortable as they could be. So 4 hours later, around 8 a.m., I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I sat down, the Foley balloon fell out on its own, which was awesome because I knew I was 4 centimeters dilated. So, you know, I could progress a little bit more easily. Still on the Pitocin, but that Foley balloon being gone helped so much. Like, I couldn't sit down. There was so much pressure, so I was kind of leaning over the bed for that 4-hour process, or laying on my side as comfortably as I could. Oh, but it wasn't excruciating, but it wasn't pleasant. So that being gone changed everything. I was able to like have contractions a little bit more easily. I could breathe and moan through them and then jump back into the conversation as normal. And yeah, so it was just much nicer. And then I do remember like having the doula come in and out. I went to like rest for a while. So I said, I don't want to monopolize you. Go help other mamas. And then, you know, if they don't need you, you come back. But I don't want to keep you with me the whole time. I want other women to be helped as well. So I rested for a while. And then basically the rest of my labor, as far as the interventions went, as far as the not interventions, the induction went, was just the Pitocin. But I will say, and I'd heard this before, so I was mentally prepared, that Pitocin contractions are far more intense than natural contractions. And your body, it's not like a one-size-fits-all thing. They increase it by 2. I don't know what the dosage is, like, so I'm not going to even say like if it's 2 milliliters, like I don't know what, but they increase it by 2. So my nurse would come in, increase it, see how my body reacted, and then like keep increasing it, because the more regular the contractions, your uterus is, you know, getting bigger, and like your cervix is, or your uterus is contracting, your cervix is getting bigger, so that the baby can be born, obviously. But because my body responded so quickly to it, she would increase it as she, you know, should. But my body reacted so quickly that I was having contractions like every 30 seconds, super intense contractions. But I was only like maybe a 6 centimeters. So again, nowhere close to being able to like do anything active or productive with those contractions. So then she had to turn down the Pitocin so that I could have like a reasonable amount of time to like breathe and prepare for the next one coming. So that was just kind of like a learning curve, but they were super intense. My husband, the nurses, and the doula took turns doing counter pressure and like doing stuff with my hips to help. And then I think I was stuck at a 6 for quite some time. There was a point where she checked me and I was a 6, and I was like, okay, awesome, like we're getting really close. And then 4 hours later, she checked me and I was still at a 6. So it was around that point where I started thinking about getting an epidural. And I didn't want to. Like going into the birth, I really wanted to have an unmedicated delivery as far as like the pain. Obviously I had Pitocin and all that stuff, but I wanted to feel my body doing what it's supposed to be doing. But there was a point where when she had said you're at a 6, and my nurse was so sweet, because when I was getting checked, my nurse said, do you want to know? And I had been in it had been intense for a long time. I'm kind of going back just a smidge. So I'd been at a 6. I got was getting checked again 4 hours later. And the nurse was so sweet. She said, do you want to know what you're at? And I thought, this is really intense. I don't know. This is just my brain. I was just thinking, I don't know if I can do this any longer if I'm not close to a 10 at this point. So I said, yeah, I want to know. And I was still only at a 6. After 4 hours, I had not dilated any further. And so it was at that point I was talking to my husband. I said, I think I want that epidural. And he was so sweet, because he knew that's not what I had wanted going in. And he was like, are you sure? And I said, yes. So then we get the nurse and we say, I said, I want that epidural. And she was really sweet, because she knew what I had wanted initially going in. And she said, are you sure? And she said, we can get the doula and see if she can help you with anything else. And I said, the doula has been amazing, but these are so intense. I can't do it anymore. I forgot some details, so I'm hoping that I can insert this portion in where it should be. But if like the timeline's overlapping or like out of place, I apologize. But my contractions were really intense because of the Pitocin, and she was moving it up and down as needed, but my contractions were still really close, and I was not very far dilated, so they weren't proactive or like productive contractions. And then I was having really terrible back labor. It is the worst pain I had ever experienced. And not that I needed validation, because, it was my own experience, but my nurse said that is what every mother has said to me that has had back labor, that it is the worst pain. I could handle the contractions. You breathe through them, you moan through them, you sway through them, you do what you gotta do, you get in different positions. You can't do anything to help back labor. Yes, you can have counter pressure, and I had counter pressure. My husband was doing it, the doula was doing it, the nurses were doing it. They were all kind of taking turns because of how much they had to push on my back during a contraction to relieve the back pressure. So he was posterior, meaning his back was pushing against my back, where you want their back, like their spine, to be along your stomach when they come out. So that was what was causing the back pressure, so the back labor. So that plus the Pitocin contractions happening back to back to back to back to back, literally, I'm not exaggerating that, like 10 to 30 seconds in between, and I was only at 6 centimeters. That's when I asked for the epidural, and my husband said, are you sure? The nurse said, are you sure? Because everyone knew my birth plan and I didn't want one going into it. But I was like, no, I am still at a 6. It's been 4 hours that I've been at a 6. I need it. So that was really like a positive part of my birth. And that might sound really strange, knowing that's not what I wanted, but that was something I was able to make the decision for myself without somebody suggesting it for me, because they all knew I didn't want it. So for me to say I want it, like, it gave me a little bit of control back, which I don't know if that's gonna make sense to anybody, but that's how I felt, and it was really awesome. So luckily we're at such a big hospital that right when I said it, the nurse called the anesthesiologist. Hi. And they brought it all in. She numbed my back, like cleaned it, numbed it. You know, I get in the position and do whatever I have to do. They wait for me to like not be having a contraction, which was hard because they were still happening really consistently. And then I got the epidural. They do the thing. And within 15 minutes, my butt's numb. And then my legs are numb from that point forward. But what was nice was it wasn't too strong of an epidural, or like there wasn't that much medication or whatever, that I could still move my legs slowly and like very well, like thinking through, but I could move them so I could get in different positions, which was necessary because he was in such a bad position being posterior that we needed to move my body so that he could get into a good birthing position. And that was really important because I was only given an hour to push. So we needed him to be in an ideal position, which sunny side up is not ideal. So I needed, and if I didn't have him within an hour or so, they were very much like, if he's clearly about to be born and it's been an hour, we're not going to intervene. But if it had been like significantly over an hour in what like in a reasonable thing, like there wasn't necessarily a time frame, but if it had come to that, I would have had to have had him vacuumed out, and I did not want that. They couldn't do forceps because the doctor was not comfortable with the forceps. She was more comfortable with the vacuum, but I was not. I was more comfortable with him having to do forceps. So in my brain, I knew I need to get him into a good spot so that he can come out without being touched. So luckily, the staff at this hospital was awesome. They knew different positions to put me into and how long to keep me in those positions to get him rotated to a good spot. So I had that epidural, they're moving me around, I'm getting there, I'm getting more rest, I'm feeling better, and 12:07 on the 6th in the morning comes around, and I am finally at 10 centimeters. So they're like, it's time. Let's just do some practice pushing, which I think was their sneaky way of like getting me to do it, but without you being like, oh, okay, it's time. It's like, let's just practice. I could be making that up, but I think that's what they do, which is really sweet. So it doesn't seem like it's a little scary about to have a baby. So it's nice to like be practicing. So, I was first pushing on my hands and knees. That really wasn't putting enough, like, it just wasn't really working. So I tried on my side a few times. That wasn't really working. So I did end up pushing on my back, which worked out really good for me. Sometimes it doesn't work great for women, but the table I was on was awesome. It like became a chair kind of. So I was like up, but like my pelvis was able to like open how it needs to. It's like my butt really wasn't on the table. Yeah, it was a really cool system. And then like two nurses had my legs a little bit. So I'm starting to push and I'm starting to push. Ooh. And you know, everyone is being so encouraging, like the nurses. I think I had my one nurse, the doctor, and then Blake. I think we're the only ones in the room for that. Ooh. And, you know, just being so supportive, telling me I'm doing such a good job. And then the doctor says, do you want a mirror so you can see like my progression? I was like, yeah, that sounds really awesome. So she put a mirror basically right next to her so I could see with each contraction how much more of his head was coming out, which was so cool. Like, if it's an option at your hospital, I highly encourage it. I will never forget it. At least I pray I don't, because that was just so special. And what was so nice was my epidural wasn't strong enough where I couldn't feel anything, so I could feel the contractions. And they wanted me to push for 10 seconds for each contraction. And I was like, as I can see my my hour-long window getting shorter and shorter and shorter, I was like pushing as hard. Like, I would do the 10 seconds, then I would breathe again, and I would do it again as long as the contraction was still happening, knowing I didn't want him to have a vacuum suction out. Yeah, no, I didn't want that for you. So I was pushing as much as I could, and my nurse would be like, take a break. Like, they were concerned with my brain and everything. I was like, no, I'm getting him out as soon as I can. So then, like, 1 o'clock rolls around, and my nurse is telling the doctor, like, it's 1 o'clock, it's been an hour. And so, you know, the timeline is up, and she said she's almost ready, we're good. And so I was like, okay, he's almost, me not knowing it's a he at the time, but the baby's almost here. So I'm pushing, and then I can feel this release of pressure. And I'm looking in the mirror, and I see his head come out, and she just says, you know, like, one more push. Yeah. One more push. And I push one more time, and like the rest of his body comes out. She puts him on my chest, and then Blake gets to say, it's a boy. Oh, it was incredible. Oh, why are you whining? Gosh, it was so amazing. And right now it is it's kind of a blur, because it's been 10 weeks and so much has happened. And I was exhausted anyways. I'd been in labor we got the hospital at 8 p.m. on the 4th. So I'd been like pretty much up all that day. And I didn't have him until 1:22. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. Like, it was at 1:07. She'd said it was an hour, because I started practicing at 12:07. So then at 1:22 is when I had him. So it's really hard to remember everything. Like, physiologically, your brain kind of blocks out a lot of that stuff anyways. And then being exhausted, and then it's like 10 weeks later anyways. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. Oh, I think he's ready for a nap. It was just awesome. My team was amazing. I had 2 nurses for the whole thing, like my morning or the day nurse and my night nurse, and both of them were incredible. Victoria and Connie. Connie was the day nurse. So after I got moved to my postpartum room, she literally came to that wing of the hospital to see me and see what we had, because there was like a tally going on, like on if it was going to be a boy or a girl. So she came in to see what we'd had and meet him, and oh, like, it was a really amazing birth experience. Yes, it was intense. The contractions were wild. The Pitocin was crazy. The back labor was awful. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. If you have back labor and you can birth without an epidural, you are a superwoman, because I could not. But it was just such a good experience. Anyways, yeah, I'm sure that was a little bit kind of all over the place, because mom brain, I'm all over the place. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed hearing my birth story, and I hope you enjoyed listening to him chatting in the background. I'm gonna go put him down for a nap now. But if you liked this video, please like it, and please subscribe to my channel. You know, more mommy content, baby content, house decor, design, all the things is coming your way. But yes, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!